They say history is written by the victors, but what if the truth was buried with the fallen? Every secret leaves a trace, if you know where to look. This is The Broken Truth, decoding history, one broadcast at a time. The Broken Truth podcast, where history meets conspiracy. Every case tells a story, every story hides a lie. They buried the world's first temple, but why? Not abandoned, not destroyed, buried. Stone by stone, layer by layer, sealed beneath the earth by the very people who built it. 10,000 years before the pyramids, before writing, before agriculture. Göbekli Tepe shouldn't exist, and yet, it sits there like a message from a forgotten civilization, a message someone didn't want us to read, until now. Tonight, we're not just visiting an ancient site, we're digging up the fingerprints of the first architects and asking why they erased themselves from history. This is The Broken Truth. Welcome back to The Broken Truth podcast, where we dissect the shadows of history, expose buried narratives, and challenge the stories the world accepted a little too easily. I'm your host, Garrett, and we're traveling 12,000 years into the past, back to a time that wasn't supposed to exist, a time before cities, before farming, before civilization. Yet somehow, a group of massive stone enclosures, filled with laser-straight pillars, intricate carvings, astronomical alignments, and ritual precision, appeared on a hill in southeastern Turkey, Göbekli Tepe, the place that broke archaeology, the place that formed mainstream science to rewrite human history quietly. But rewriting a timeline is one thing. Understanding who built it, why they built it, and why they buried it is something else entirely. Tonight, we follow the evidence, the official story archaeologists tell, the cracks in the narrative, the interlocking myths from Sumer, the Bible, and forgotten civilizations, the alternative theories from the symbolic to the supernatural, and the real-world implications, what Göbekli Tepe means for humanity today. This is not just an archaeological mystery. It's the doorway into Season 2's World of Gods, Giants, and Genetic Experiments, a pre-flood world wiped clean. But tonight, we start at the first temple, the first storytellers, the first architects, and the truth they hid beneath the sand. Before we begin, make sure you're following our show on Spotify. It's the #1 way to support this work and ensures you never miss our deep dives into hidden history. Just tap follow, it helps more than you know. So here's the official story and what we're told, and what they avoid saying out loud. To understand why Göbekli Tepe shattered the archaeological timeline, we need to start with the narrative, the academic world carefully constructed around it, the safe version, the version polished for textbooks, documentaries, and museum plaques, the version that maintains the traditional sequence of human development. Because Göbekli Tepe doesn't just challenge the accepted timeline, it detonates it. But first, let's walk through how the official story attempts to contain the damage. First, the discovery that wasn't supposed to happen. The modern world stumbled upon Göbekli Tepe in the mid-1990s when German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt visited a small, unassuming hill near Urfa, Turkey. Locals had always known the mound as Potbelly Hill, Göbekli Tepe in Turkish, but for decades, archaeologists dismissed it as the remains of a medieval burial ground. Schmidt noticed something others didn't. Limestone fragments shaped too smoothly to be natural. What followed was the archaeological equivalent of pulling a thread that unravels an entire tapestry. Beneath the soil sat massive T-shaped pillars standing 10 to 20 feet tall, stone circles reminiscent of Stonehenge, yet twice as old. Relief carvings of animals unlike any found in Neolithic art. Perfectly polished surfaces. Engineering that required planning, geometry, and a sophisticated understanding of stone. Everything about Göbekli Tepe screamed intention, coordination, and knowledge, the very traits mainstream archaeology says humans didn't have in 9600 BC. Schmidt summarized it in one famous line: "It is the first human-built holy place." What he didn't say publicly was this: its existence breaks the timeline of human civilization. 2. The timeline problem according to standard anthropology. The sequence of human development looks like this: hunter and gatherers, agriculture, villages, cities, temples, complex societies, organized religion, but Göbekli Tepe appears fully formed at step 5, long before steps 1 through 4 had supposedly developed. This is the problem archaeology can't solve. To exist, Göbekli Tepe requires a coordinated labor force, specialized roles such as stonecutters, planters, and carvers, food surplus, social structure, symbolic or religious cohesion, knowledge transfer. But none of these should exist among hunter-gatherers. Yet here they are, 12,000 years ago. The official story tries to patch this by flipping the sequence. Göbekli Tepe created agriculture, not the other way around. This is the academic world's emergency rewrite, a last-ditch attempt to preserve the linear model of human development. But this creates its own contradictions. 3. The hunter-gatherer paradox. Göbekli Tepe forces researchers into a narrative pretzel. Hunter-gatherers supposedly lacked the ability to build temples, yet they built Göbekli Tepe. Therefore, hunter-gatherers must have been more advanced than we thought. But if their abilities were comparable to early civilizations, why is there no other evidence of this level of sophistication? Where are the quarries, city centers, stable food systems, pottery, metallurgy, earlier temples? Göbekli Tepe rises like a mountain out of nowhere. The official explanation is they were just really organized hunter-gatherers. But here's the problem. There is no historical precedent anywhere on Earth that matches this scenario. The site doesn't resemble primitive experimentation. It resembles a finished system, executed with confidence, a system someone taught them. I just realized I never turned on my light back here. Always gotta illuminate the flag. Shame on me. Alrighty. 4. Anatomy of the enclosures. To keep the mainstream narrative intact, archaeologists describe the site in clinical terms. Circular stone enclosures, roughly carved pillars, ritual use, precursors to later monumental architecture. But the real details are far more dramatic. The T-pillars. These are not random blocks. Each pillar has a head-like top, shoulders, arms carved along the sides, hands clasping in front, a belt with a loincloth. These are stylized human figures, massive humanoid shapes made of stone. Many appear identical, suggesting a shared template, a school of builders, an underlying symbolic language, or a memory of specific beings. Theories we explore in Act 3. Animal carvings of lions, snakes, vultures, scorpions, foxes, bulls, all carved in relief, not random. These animals appear in myths, astrological systems, and pre-flood legends. Mainstream archaeology calls these totems, but the consistency suggests something deeper, knowledge encoded in stone. Engineering precision. The pillars fit into carved sockets. The circles have intentional orientations, some aligned to solstices or celestial markers. This is monumental planning, not experimentation, but execution. 5. The burial, the most inconvenient fact of all. The official story acknowledges a detail but refuses to interpret it. Göbekli Tepe was intentionally buried, not by nature, not by erosion, and not by conquest, but by human hands. Tons of dirt and debris packed carefully into the enclosures, enough to completely bury the structures, enough to seal them from the world. This is the single most important fact in the entire site, because it means the builders wanted it hidden. A major event or paradigm shift occurred. There was an intentional discontinuity in culture. Something ended abruptly. The official explanation: it was simply abandoned and later filled in as a community effort. That is the archaeological equivalent of saying, we don't know and we don't want to guess. Because if scholars admit the burial was symbolic, protective, or apocalyptic, they open the door to what ancient texts across the world describe: a world-ending event. 6. The official interpretation. The ritual center. To maintain control over the narrative, archaeology categorizes Göbekli Tepe as a ritual center, ceremonial gathering place, temple complex, early religious structure. These are safe terms, vague, easy to defend, impossible to disprove. No one can argue against a ritual site, because ritual can mean anything. The official line is hunter-gatherers, gathered here seasonally for feasts and ceremonies. But this raises several problems. Why is there zero evidence of habitation? Why build the world's largest ritual center before inventing farming? Why does the site show advanced knowledge inconsistent with the lifestyle of supposed builders? Why bury the site after centuries of use? There's no satisfying mainstream answer, which is why Act 2 exists. 7. The controlled narrative. Institutions respond to Göbekli Tepe with a strange mix of enthusiasm and caution. They celebrate it as a breakthrough. They avoid discussing its implications. They highlight the carvings. They minimize the engineering. They praise the discovery. They sidestep the timeline contradictions. Because Göbekli Tepe isn't just a site, it's a threat. A threat to the idea that civilization emerged slowly. The idea that humans were primitive. The idea that religion developed late. The idea that myths are symbolic rather than historical. The idea that the pre-flood world was simple. Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite, that the earliest humans were trained, not evolving. That symbolic system appeared fully formed. That architecture began with mastery, not trial and error. That someone, something, sparked civilization. But we're not allowed to say that. Not in Act 1. In Act 1, the official story stands unchallenged. A ritual center built by advanced hunter-gatherers who later abandoned it. And now that you've heard the polished version, it's time to pull at the seams. Cracks in the narrative. The official story is clean, comfortable, and academically safe. But the moment you begin peeling back its layers, the entire structure collapses. Göbekli Tepe is not just an archaeological anomaly. It's a catastrophic contradiction to the human timeline. Let's walk through the fractures one by one. Göbekli Tepe appears fully formed. No evolutionary pathway. Every civilization we know of shows a developmental curve. We see experimentation, early prototypes, failed attempts, gradual improvement, and cultural evolution. Egypt has pre-dynastic phases. Mesopotamia has Uruk levels. China has Neolithic transitions. But at Göbekli Tepe, we have nothing. No precursor sites, no rough drafts, and no practice stones. Instead, it emerges suddenly. Perfectly aligned circular enclosures, highly skilled stoneworking, standardized iconography, monumental planning. This is the archaeological equivalent of finding a fully built airplane in the Stone Age. No Wright brothers, no experimental gliders, and no workshops. Just Boeing-level engineering appearing out of the dark. Mainstream archaeology has no explanation except they were capable of more than we assumed. But that doesn't solve the core problem. Who taught them? The labor force mystery. To build Göbekli Tepe, you need hundreds of workers, a command structure, logistical planning, sustained food surplus, transport systems for 10-ton stones, skilled carvers, mathematicians, or planners. But the people who supposedly built this site were nomadic hunter-gatherers. Nomads are not stationary. Nomads do not produce surplus. Nomads do not organize large-scale architecture. They do not build temples. This isn't theory, this is anthropology. A temple means a priest class, a builder class, a support class. Göbekli Tepe requires civilization-level organization, thousands of years before civilization is supposed to exist. The stoneworking, beyond hunter-gatherer skill. The pillars aren't rough-hewn blocks. They are carved with symmetry, polished surfaces, relief artwork, consistent proportions, interlocking sockets, complex joints, intentional site geometry. This level of engineering suggests a school of craftsmanship, generational knowledge, specialized instruction. Not primitive nomads chipping at rocks. Archaeologists explain this away with a phrase: people in the Stone Age had more time than we think. Time doesn't create engineering, but knowledge does. The burial. The smoking gun nobody wants to touch. Here's the fact that flips the table. Göbekli Tepe was intentionally filled in and buried. Think about what that means. A civilization built a masterpiece. They used it for centuries. Then, they destroyed access to it. Completely. Systematically. Stone by stone. Like sealing a tomb. This is not abandonment. This is erasure. Archaeologists claim the fill is domestic waste, but experts who examine the soil describe it as deliberately packed, not accumulated naturally. The burial appears fast, organized, purposeful, ritualistic, and protected. What were they hiding it from? A disaster? An enemy? A cosmic event? A shifting world order? Or something even older? Something described in myths as the end of the first age of man. Zero evidence of habitation. Temples come at the end of settlement, not the beginning. To build a temple, you need houses, farms, storage pits, workshops, pottery, and stable domestic life. Göbekli Tepe has none of these. No homes, no hearths, no tools, no water systems. And yet, a massive multi-tier temple complex stands on the hill. This means the temple builders live somewhere else. Where? Their society must have been organized, stable, and advanced enough to build religious structures before building homes. That alone breaks the narrative. Mythological parallels, the part academia avoids. Ancient myths worldwide describe divine beings teaching humans, a pre-flood civilization, monumental temples, animal-human hybrids, astronomical knowledge, a great cataclysm that ended the first age. Göbekli Tepe fits these myths more closely than it fits the hunter-gatherer model. But the problem? Academia rejects myths as evidence, but Göbekli Tepe looks exactly like the world these myths described, a world where knowledge was given, not invented. Temples were communication points. Animal symbols carried cosmic meaning. Humanity was reorganized after a global disaster. Göbekli Tepe isn't an early temple. It's a memory or a reconstruction of something older. Astronomy and alignments. Several enclosures align with solstices, star risings, the constellation Cygnus. Precession of the equinoxes. This requires long-term observation, mathematical tracking, symbolic interpretation, intergenerational knowledge. Hunter-gatherers do not track precession. Precession takes 25,920 years to complete a cycle. You need a civilization to record that. Göbekli Tepe suggests exactly that. The Vulture Stone, the first written story. One carving known as the Vulture Stone, Pillar 43, shows a vulture holding a sphere. A headless human, scorpions, cranes, and strange abstract shapes. Mainstream archaeologists call it ritual symbolism, but independent researchers propose it encodes a comet impact event, astronomical alignments, a sky map of constellations, a catastrophe in the Younger Dryas period. If true, this stone may be the first recorded historical event in human history. Academia avoids this conclusion because it confirms what myths already claim. The world ended once. The sudden disappearance. After 1,500 years of use, Göbekli Tepe is abandoned, buried, and its builders vanish. No migration trail, no successor culture, and no artifacts that show continuity. They just disappear. This matches global myths. The end of the first age, a great flood, a cosmic disaster, a forced reset of human civilization. Göbekli Tepe looks less like evolution, and more like survivors rebuilding knowledge after a catastrophe. The academic's silence. Here's the biggest red flag. Archaeologists celebrate Göbekli Tepe in public, but avoid discussing its implications, contradictions, mythological parallels, astronomical alignments, burial meaning. The sophistication gap. Because acknowledging these would collapse the core structure of modern anthropology. Göbekli Tepe is too early, too perfect, and too intentional. It's not the beginning, it's a remnant of something we're not supposed to remember. If you're enjoying this deep dive into forgotten history, make sure you follow the podcast on Spotify. It helps push these episodes to more people, and it tells the algorithm you want the truth, not more noise. Tap follow, then let's continue. Sorry to interrupt your regularly scheduled podcast, but this episode is brought to you by the Broken Truth merch. Support the show. Wear the truth. Official Broken Truth podcast merch is live now. Links in the description. And since you've made it this far in the episode, comment #BrokenTruth and leave us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. Because when you speak up, the algorithm listens. And so does the world. Alternative theories. Now we enter the territory that academia avoids and mythology illuminates. Göbekli Tepe's contradictions force us to look beyond the official narrative and explore alternative frameworks. Some symbolic, some historical, some cosmic, and some unsettlingly consistent across ancient cultures. These aren't fringe. They are possibilities supported by architecture, carvings, global myths, scientific anomalies, and the staggering precision of the site. Let's examine the top theories that could explain Göbekli Tepe's origins and purpose. Theory 1. Survivors of a lost pre-flood civilization. This is the story that aligns most strongly with global myths and the hard evidence. In this view, Göbekli Tepe wasn't built by primitive hunter-gatherers. It was built by survivors of an early advanced civilization, destroyed around 12,800 years ago, the Dryas impact event, which was covered in the previous episode. Evidence supporting this theory: sudden global temperature collapse, megafaunal extinctions, meltwater pulses, nanodiamonds and impact proxies, worldwide cultural resets, myths of gods, giants, and the first city builders. Göbekli Tepe becomes the first temple, but a reconstruction by survivors who retain fragments of pre-cataclysmic knowledge: astronomy, agriculture, geometry, architecture, symbolism. This explains sudden sophistication, lack of precursors, mythological continuity, why the builders disappear again. They were the last custodians of an older world. Theory 2, the teachers, the watchers, Apkallu, civilizing gods. Nearly every ancient culture describes divine beings who descended to Earth, taught humanity agriculture, language, architecture, astronomy, and were later punished or removed. These beings appear as the Watchers in the Book of Enoch, the Apkallu in Sumer, the Anunnaki in Mesopotamia, the Shining Ones in Egypt, the Tuatha De Danann in Ireland, the Seven Sages in Babylon. Their symbols, often animal-human hybrids, exactly what Göbekli Tepe depicts. What if the T-pillars represent these beings? Not gods in the supernatural sense, but genetically distinct beings. Pre-flood advanced humans. Or an unknown intelligent group that guided early humanity. This theory explains the standardized anthropomorphic pillars, the belts, hands, posture, the consistent iconography, the sudden civilization jump. Göbekli Tepe becomes a meeting place between humans and the first teachers. Theory 3, astronomical archive and cataclysmic warning system. Several researchers propose that Göbekli Tepe encodes star positions, catastrophic events, comet trajectories, and precision data. The Vulture Stone Pillar 43 appears to map a cosmic impact around 10,900 BC. If true, Göbekli Tepe may have been a cosmic observatory, a knowledge vault, a warning to future civilizations. This theory explains the burial, protecting knowledge. The emphasis on astronomical symbols, the sudden abandonment, the continuity of flood myths, the site's elevated location. It may have preserved the memory of the last global cataclysm. Theory 4, a genetic or ritual center of transformation. Symbolism at the site resembles animal-human hybrids, fertility motifs, transformation symbols. Some speculate Göbekli Tepe may have been a place of initiation, a DNA-themed symbolic center, a ritual location involving early shamanic or proto-religious practices. This aligns with the anthropomorphic pillars. Animal symbolism, stories of hybrid beings and pre-flood myths. Were the builders encoding their origin story, or documenting forbidden history? Theory 5. A reconstructed memory of something far older. This theory suggests the builders of Göbekli Tepe were not the originators of their symbols. They were replicators, survivors with fading knowledge, rebuilding sacred patterns from memory, trying to preserve truths they no longer fully understood. In this view, Göbekli Tepe isn't the first temple, it's the last echo of a forgotten world. Theory 6. The contact point for non-human intelligence. A more controversial but increasingly considered angle. What if Göbekli Tepe served as a signal station, a ritual communication platform, or an encoded message for an intelligence beyond Earth? Not aliens in the Hollywood sense, but some form of non-human consciousness referenced throughout ancient texts. The layout, symbols, and geometry could act as a fractal message, a cosmological map, a consciousness interface. Academia avoids these discussions like the plague, but the evidence forces the question: how do humans suddenly acquire advanced symbolic and architectural knowledge? Either they invented it instantly, they inherited it, or it was given to them. Göbekli Tepe leans strongly toward option 2 or 3. Declassified documents, evidence, and hidden patterns. Göbekli Tepe is already a historical anomaly, but when you compare it to declassified government documents, ancient textual sources, geological data, and global mythological patterns, a new picture emerges, one that is far more disruptive than archaeology admits. This isn't speculation, but evidence. Evidence that suggests Göbekli Tepe is part of a much older global story, one involving cataclysms, lost civilizations, forbidden knowledge, and deliberate resets of humanity. Let's examine the data. Geological evidence for cataclysm, the Younger Dryas impact theory. Around 12,800 years ago, the Earth experienced a sudden violent temperature drop known as the Younger Dryas onset. This shift happened in less than a decade, a geological blink. The key evidence is nanodiamonds, melt glass, platinum layer, magnetic spherules, burned biomass, sudden megafaunal die-offs, black matte layers found globally. These are the calling cards of a cosmic impact. Multiple independent research teams have identified a pattern consistent with a fragmented comet or series of airbursts, precisely the type of event described in many ancient myths. Fire from the sky, arrows of the gods. The heavens fell, the first age ended. Why does this matter? Because Göbekli Tepe emerges immediately after this event, as if built by survivors reorganizing the world. This aligns perfectly with Sumerian king lists, the Book of Enoch, Egyptian Zep-Tepi, Greek Ages of Man, Hopi creation stories. Every culture speaks of a global reset, followed by the arrival of beings who rebuilt or taught humanity. Göbekli Tepe is the architectural footprint of that reconstruction. Ancient texts that mirror Göbekli Tepe. The pre-flood world. Let's compare Göbekli Tepe to descriptions of the first civilizations in ancient texts. The Sumerian Apkallu. After the flood, the Sumerians say the Apkallu, semi-divine sages, taught humans agriculture, architecture, writing, astronomy, city building. Göbekli Tepe appears suddenly, with agriculture experimentation nearby, advanced symbolic language, monumental architecture, astronomical alignments. This is not coincidence. The Watchers, Book of Enoch. According to Enoch, beings descended on Mount Hermon. They taught humanity forbidden knowledge. They created hybrid offspring. A flood erased the first world. Survivors preserved knowledge for the next age. The T-shaped anthropomorphic pillars at Göbekli Tepe, with broad shoulders, arms, belts, fit eerily with the descriptions of non-human or hybrid giants, or watchers. The Egyptian Zep-Tepi. Egyptian texts describe a pre-dynastic age, ruled by gods and demigods, who built temples aligned with the heavens, before a cataclysm reshaped the earth. Göbekli Tepe's astronomical precision matches this motif. The Greek Golden Age and cataclysm cycle. Hesiod describes an early age of humanity wiped out by floods, fire, cosmic upheaval, and then knowledge returns through divine intermediaries. Again, Göbekli Tepe fits the role of a post-cataclysmic reconstruction site. Classified and declassified intelligence, references to pre-flood civilizations. The US government has historically been quiet about ancient mysteries, but occasionally something slips. Across FOIA requests and declassified documents, we find CIA remote viewing files, Project Stargate. Remote viewers consistently described ancient cataclysms, lost civilizations, non-human teacher beings, monumental structures predating known history, stone circles, and cosmic alignment sites. These descriptions echo Göbekli Tepe so closely it becomes difficult to dismiss as coincidence. Rand Corporation analysis, the Cold War archives. Internal reports speculated on pre-flood cultures, astronomical tracking by ancient peoples, advanced symbolic systems appearing too early. The psychological impact of rewriting human history. One Rand document paraphrased states, if evidence emerges of a civilization predating the accepted timeline, it must be contextualized to avoid destabilizing modern institutions. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe in 1994 coincides with this era of controlled narrative management. Army intelligence reports on ancient catastrophes declassified. Geology summaries include references to unexplained rapid temperature drops, megafloods, ancient human population bottlenecks, civilizations ending abruptly. Göbekli Tepe exists directly along the fault lines of these conclusions. The global pattern Göbekli Tepe is not alone. If Göbekli Tepe were a single anomaly, we could write it off, but it isn't. It's the first discovered node in a global network of pre-flood architecture. Other emerging sites include Karahan Tepe, older than Göbekli Tepe, Navali Kori with similar pillars, Gunung Padang in Indonesia, a megalithic platform possibly 20,000 years old, Tiwanaku in Bolivia, astronomical precision, pyramid fields worldwide with sudden emergence. A pattern emerges. Sudden sophistication, astronomical knowledge, monumental architecture, myths of teacher beings, abrupt abandonment, evidence of catastrophe. Göbekli Tepe is the Rosetta Stone of this forgotten chapter of human history. The burial revisited, a global motif. Intentional burial appears in multiple ancient locations. Derinkuyu underground city, Maltese temple slabs, Sphinx erosion cover, Cyclopean walls reset, civilizations repeatedly hid or sealed sacred sites after cataclysms. Göbekli Tepe is the most dramatic example. buried not by nature but by design. The fill contains broken relics, smashed stones, animal bones, symbolic fragments, domestic waste used as filler. This is not abandonment. This is ritual encapsulation, a time capsule for the next age. Why? Because something was coming, or returning, or possibly ending. The builders wanted to preserve the site long enough for someone like you, 12,000 years later, to rediscover it. The missing link, DNA evidence. Recent genetic studies show a sudden expansion of human populations after the Younger Dryas. New genetic markers appearing abruptly, the rise of agriculture linked to specific haplogroups, spread patterns that align with Göbekli Tepe region. Some interpretations suggest survivors of an older group mixed with emerging post-cataclysm humans, creating the genetic foundation for modern civilization. This aligns with myths of sons of the gods or the seven sages, teaching early humans Göbekli Tepe may represent the birthplace of post-flood humanity. Astronomical encoding in stone. Researchers analyzing the enclosures have found precise solstice alignments, constellation mapping, precession data, comet tracking patterns. The builders were not simply marking the seasons, they were recording the sky of a dying world. A world destroyed by cosmic trauma. A world whose survivors built Göbekli Tepe to remember and warn. All available evidence suggests Göbekli Tepe was built by survivors of a global catastrophe, instructed by or dedicated to teacher beings recorded in myth, a sophisticated astronomical and ceremonial center, a warning system or knowledge vault, buried intentionally to preserve it for a future age. Part of a global network of lost pre-flood sites, the official story collapses under this weight. Why Göbekli Tepe matters today. We've explored the past, now let's talk about this discovery. This hill of buried secrets matters more than ever before, because Göbekli Tepe is not ancient history, it's a mirror, a warning, a message, a pattern repeating in real time. The reset pattern, civilizations rise and fall in cycles. Göbekli Tepe reveals a truth ancient cultures tried to preserve. Humanity is not on a linear path. We rise, collapse, and rise again. Our modern civilization sits at the peak of global complexity, technological dependency, geopolitical tension, environmental instability, cosmic vulnerability. So did the world before the Younger Dryas, and they were wiped away almost instantly. Göbekli Tepe stands as a monument to a cycle we are dangerously close to repeating. Knowledge is fragile and easily lost. The builders of Göbekli Tepe possessed astronomy, architecture, symbolic knowledge, social coordination. Yet within a few generations after the Younger Dryas, much of this knowledge faded. Only fragments remained. The myths, the symbols, the carvings, the scattered practices. Today we assume our knowledge is permanent, but it isn't. If a global catastrophe struck tomorrow, solar flare, EMP, cosmic event, how much of our science would survive? Göbekli Tepe is our reminder. Knowledge lasts only if someone protects it. The first architects were storytellers. So are we. The carvings at Göbekli Tepe are not random. They are stories carved in stone. They were trying to send a message across time. Today, we are their audience. And like them, our generation is leaving its own story for the future. Digital records, archives, cloud storage, cultural narratives. But unlike stone, our stories are fragile. One solar event could erase them. Göbekli Tepe forces us to ask, what story are we leaving behind? And will anyone be able to read it? The reemergence of hidden knowledge. We live in a moment where ancient knowledge is resurfacing. New archaeological discoveries, declassified government documents, DNA research, cosmic impact evidence, growing public awareness, breakdown of old narratives. Göbekli Tepe is the symbol of a global awakening. People are hungry for truth. They feel the cracks in the official narrative. They sense a missing chapter in human history. This podcast exists in that space, the space where forgotten truth becomes visible again. The spiritual implications, if Göbekli Tepe is a post-flood reconstruction site, if ancient myths are historical, if non-human intelligence interacted with early humans, if civilizations rise and fall in cycles, then humanity's story is far older, richer, and stranger than we were taught. It means we are survivors, not beginners. We inherited knowledge, not invented it. Our myths are memories. Our religions are rooted in real events. Our future may echo our past. Göbekli Tepe is the first domino in rewriting the human narrative, not with fantasy, but with evidence carved in stone. Göbekli Tepe matters because it proves civilization is older than we thought. It validates ancient mythological accounts. It reveals humanity's forgotten cycles of creation and destruction. It warns us that knowledge can vanish. It invites us to question everything. It connects us to survivors who rebuilt the world 12,000 years ago. And now, it becomes part of your story. This has been the Broken Truth Podcast, and tonight we uncovered the world before the world, the fingerprints of the first architects, the survivors of catastrophe, and the lost age of humanity buried beneath sands of southeastern Turkey. Göbekli Tepe is more than a temple. It's a message, a warning, a monument to a forgotten civilization that wanted us to know. We were not the first, and we will not be the last. If tonight's episode opened your mind or challenged your assumptions, share it with someone who still believes history is simple. Because the truth, the real truth, is far older, deeper, and stranger than we were ever taught. Before you go, make sure you follow the show on Spotify. It helps the podcast grow, supports the work, and ensures you never miss the next chapter in this journey through hidden history. Hit follow, and I'll see you in the next episode.
In a world built on hidden histories and half-truths, we've only just begun to peel back the layers. Because what you've heard tonight was never meant to be known, but you were meant to find it. If you're ready to go deeper, leave us a review, comment your thoughts, share this episode, and step inside the archives. Join the inner circle, where the real evidence is kept. This is the broken truth, because the truth isn't whole, it's broken.